Good evening. This upcoming week is Parshas Re'eh, and it is Shabbos Mevorachim. We have, it should be Sunday, Monday, Rosh Chodesh, and it's Elul. As I've said to you, you know that Erev Rosh Chodesh is called Yom Kippur Kotan. And Yom Kippur Kotan, people come to Shul, they lein Vayechal, and they fast. Now, this week that we're going to have Rosh Chodesh, Motzoi, Shabbos, and Sunday night, so you can't fast Erev Rosh Chodesh, that's Shabbos, so they bring it back to Thursday. And if you go into Shomer Shabbos, you'll see 200 people saying Yom Kippur Kotan. Yom Kippur Kotan and preparing for the month. And many don't do this Seder every Rosh Chodesh. But this Erev Rosh Chodesh, since it's Elul, it's a very, very special, auspicious time. We're ushering in a new year. It's already here. It seems like it was just yesterday that we had Rosh Hashanah last year. And here we are once again. Now, from Rosh Chodesh Elul until Yom Kippur is 40 days. And in 40 days you have 24 hours in each day, which means from Rosh Chodesh and through Yom Kippur, you have 960 hours. Now in a mikveh, that is metaher and mezachech, it purifies all the spirituality of a person, that when you go into a mikveh, the mikveh consists of 40 saw. Saw is a measurement, and there has to be 40 saw. If you have 39 saw, it's not an effective mikveh to validate the tahara process. So there's 40 saw, but in every saw there is 24 lugan. So you have 24 lugan in each saw, and you have 40 saw, so that's 960 lugan. To tell us that just like a mikveh with its 960 lugan is capable of uplifting a person and cleansing him and purifying him to divest from himself all of the impurities and all the issues with Kedusha versus Tumah, so too the 960 hours from Rosh Chodesh Elul through Yom Kippur is metaher and mezachech the person. Haba olenu letoiva, that we should have a guten chodesh, and as I tell you, the Rosh Chodesh embodies the entire month, just like the head embodies the entire body, that without the head on the body, you can't control your fingers, your feet. That's the central station. So too is Rosh Chodesh. But the Shabbos Mevorachim, the day before, the 5 days, whenever the Shabbos Mevorachim before Rosh Chodesh comes out, it has in it the entire power of the Chodesh, the Rosh Chodesh, and then the entire month. So this Shabbos, which is Shabbos Re'eh, and it's Shabbos Mevorachim, I encourage each and every one to stop for a moment and ask themselves, how can I uplift and enrich the level of the nachas ruach, the satisfaction that we deliver on a silver platter to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that when He hears how we make Kiddush and how we say Divrei Torah and how we enjoy the foods, Oneg Shabbos, to enjoy it, that for the moment to think, what can I do, even if it's a small item, to make starting this Chodesh Elul, a new year we're ushering in, to make it special. And there's no better time than Shabbos Mevorchim of Elul, which embodies the entire month, and it carries us into Rosh Hashanah. Now we know that when the Yaakov Avinu saw that the overall control of each and every month was up for grabs, so he ran, says the Medrash, he ran and he, so to speak, reserved and put under his umbrella Nisan, Iyar, and Sivan. And Esav realized what he did, so he ran and took Tammuz, Av, and Elul. Now, before Mashiach comes, we have to always throw a bone to the Samach Mem, to the impurities of the world, the Koyach Hara of all the Mekatrigim. We cannot totally eliminate them because we're in Golus. And as we know that when the Rebbe Rab Meilech, as I have mentioned, and his brother went into Golus, they weren't just walking around. They were being Matayr and Mekadesh each and every place, and beating to a pulp the Koiches Hara, the Mechablim, and the Mekatrigim. And they were very successful to a point, as Rav Zevin brings, that the Samach Mem in heaven said he's quitting his job. Because if they're going in and they're wiping out so much of the bad, he has nothing to latch onto. He's going to quit. So they, in heaven, told them to go out of Golus and go back home. Because until Mashiach comes, the Samach Mem has that power to be able to overcome a Yid with temptation and we have a constant fight on our hands. So Yaakov Avinu, when Esav grabbed Tammuz and Av, he knew he had to let him have something. And therefore, Tammuz and Av remained those 6 weeks, told what we just had, Chamisha Asar Ba'av, in the domain and the realm of the Samach Mem, of the Yetzer Hara. That's how we had so much tragedy, the Churban Beis HaMikdash and the Egel, so many negative things happened with Klal Yisrael. But Yaakov Avinu, says the Medrash, when he was fighting that night with the Sar Shel Esav, he was fighting to get the Elul back because he knew that Rosh Hashanah, Tishrei, without an Elul before it, was an uphill battle. And that was one of the main things, says the Arizal, that he was fighting with the Sar Shel Esav to get back under his umbrella the month of Elul, which he succeeded. And Baruch Hashem, we are able to turn Elul into a vehicle of executing our Torah Lishma, our chesed that we do, to be matar our machshava, and to be able to get the best out of each and every hour of each and every day. So it is indeed a very big undertaking when we come into the month of Elul and we are able to overcome. And as the Balatanya says, there is no greater nachas ruach, pleasure, for HaKadosh Baruch Hu than when a Yid overcomes the Ra. That means every day we can have 20 fights and encounters with our Yetzer Hara to do this, to do that. And when we overcome and we are able to succeed in withholding and devouring and overcoming each and every temptation, says the Balatanya, that there is no greater nachas ruach for HaKadosh Baruch Hu than when that happens. Now, the Meforshim talk about the fact that the first word of our Sedra, Re'eh, is a singular. And the pasuk continues just a few words later, Re'eh hineni nosein lifnechem hayom bracha uklola. Lifnechem is a plural. So when you start the very beginning of the Sedra with Re'eh, a singular, and then 5 words later you say Lifnechem, plural, the Meforshim are curious. Why the change? Why the difference? Why begin? Because he was talking to the whole Klal Yisrael. So why talk singular, like you say, to one person? But the answer the Meforshim say is that it began with the singular because indeed Moshe Rabbeinu was speaking to each and every person. Because when you take a person and you shake him for a moment physically and you say, wake up, look around and see how much good there is out there and how much good is in your life. Don't wake up in the morning and wash Negelwasser next to your bed and right away start thinking, oh, this problem and that problem and this one said this and that one said that, and you're for 20 years carrying a grudge. You, the individual, I'm speaking to you. And wake up that there's bracha and klala. Yeah, there's difficulties in life every day of our lives. But the bracha is so manifest and so strong. Why don't you recognize that and make that a priority of cementing the factoring of each and every day in its totality? Now we know that the Yid HaKadosh said in Parshas Vayeshev, where it talks about Yosef when he was in the house of Potiphar after he was sold and he ended up in Mitzrayim. So the pasuk says, if you look in those psukim, it says many times, V'Hashem hitzliach biyado, HaKadosh Baruch Hu caused Yosef to be very successful. And it keeps talking about Hatzlocha, Hitzliach. And then before that segment finishes, it says, Beirach, Vayevorech Hashem Oso, that there's bracha. So the Yid HaKadosh asked, who was a Talmud Muvik of the Choiz of Lublin, why do we speak of Hatzlocha and Hatzlocha and Hatzlocha and then suddenly change the phrase to bracha? So he explained, because it was Vayehi Meoz ki hifkid oso al kol beso. Yosef, up until that point, still had to every day answer to Potiphar what's doing and what's, and he had Hatzlacha. But Hatzlacha is less and lower than Bracha. But when the Pasuk says, Ki hifkid also, he said to him, you know, Yosef, I'm putting everything under you. You make the decisions. It's under your deciding factor that the business and all of the happenings in the house will take place. Then it says Vayevarech, because as long as he was under the hashpah and direct connection and direction of Potiphar the Goy, he couldn't succeed in superseding the level of Hatzlacha. But Ki Hifkid also, I'll call Beso, the day he came in and said, I've decided you're trustworthy and loyal. I'm going to put you in charge of everything. Then Vayevarech, he was Zoicha to the Inya of Bracha. So in our parsha, when it says Bracha Klala, Bracha is the highest level of success within the realm of Olam Hazeh, that a person could break the barrier that if it's normal to make $1,000 a week and he has Hatzlacha, it's 2,000. But Bracha is 10,000. So our parsha that talks about Bracha is in the realm of a person being able to supersede any level of even Hatzlacha and to go heavenward with his success in his Machshava, Dibur, and Maisa, and he's able to go over the fence into that realm. Now, we know that the parsha talks in the beginning about Avodah Zarah. And Moshe Rabbeinu, because you realize, all of us think, how could they be so foolish to bow down to a piece of wood or a stone? But it says that the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah was so big that people easily fell in. And that's why the Chachamim were mevatel the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. So for us not to ever in our lives bow down or chas v'sholom be an oived avodah is simple, because the whole Yetzer Hara was taken away. And that's why we don't have the Yetzer Hara of Avodah Zarah. But our pasuk says, "V'ibadatem es shemam," that you should erase, you should wipe out their names. Now, one of the strongest averas, it's not an Isser Chorus but it's hammered away at, is to wipe out the names of Avodah Zarah. And we know that when David HaMelech began building the Bais HaMikdash, which the first 6 rows that I've told you on occasion, he did the first 6 rows, which still can be seen. Those 6 rows way down, if you know where to look. Because HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him that there's going to be a time of destruction of this Bais HaMikdash, and anything that you build cannot be destroyed. So stop building and let your son Shlomo finish everything that has to happen. But it says that there burst forth water the well springs of water, and the world was about to be flooded. And Achitophel came and told David, take Hashem's name on a parchment and throw it into the water. Because even though there's an issue to wipe out the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but we know by Soita, when there's an unfaithful woman, that if she's brought to the Kohen and he goes through the process of giving her the Mehamorim, but they put into the water the name of Hashem, the Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, on parchment, and if she was innocent, then it brings shalom, she lives, and not only lives, but if she was somebody who didn't have children, she became pregnant. It became a brach of the water for her. So Achitophel said that if to make peace and shalom between a husband and a wife, an individual couple, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, take my name and erase it to help bring the process of tranquility between husband and wife. So Achitophel said, if Hashem said that for an individual couple, so then certainly for the whole Klal Yisrael, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was married to Klal Yisrael, he's the Chosan and Klal Yisrael is the Kala, because the world's about to be destroyed, and what's going to be with Klal Yisrael? So certainly it could be done, and that's what David did, and the waters subsided. So that's in the V'ibadatem Shemam, and that the pasuk says, "Lo sasu kein laHashem Elokeichem." Don't ever wipe out the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So there is a touch on the Chachamim in the Aseres Hadibros when it says that about Lo sisa es Shem Hashem Elokecha lashov, that there is a extra sensitivity, Chazal say, to this inyan, even though it's a lav, and you're not allowed to do such a thing. It's not in the Sirkoret, it's not a chi of Misa, but there is, and that's why people should not even say, I swear, or by God, I swear, because it's like bringing in the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in a way that is not coveted and befitting for it. Now, we know that in this parsha, Shmini was our introduction to kashrus, what's kosher, what's not kosher, birds, which animals. And now in Re'eh, this week's parsha, again, it's mentioned and it's discussed. Now, I want to say to you that kashrus is so important that it's one of two things that bring about not only chas v'shalom a lav if someone eats treif, it's metamtem the lev. And I have said to you on occasion that it permeates the spirituality and it has a very negative effect on the spirituality, the trait, besides the lav, that it's usher to eat it, it drenches the soul with negativity, with tumah. And that's the reason that a pregnant woman, a woman who is expecting, is told that while she is expecting, she has to be very careful in the food she eats. And even if she doesn't have Chol of Yisrael a whole year, but when she's expecting, she should have only Chol of Yisrael. Because the kashrus affects not only herself, but the baby she's carrying. And she has the responsibility. Just like when a woman is expecting, she won't eat certain things, she won't drink wine. It could negatively affect the baby inside her. So too, that the spirituality which is formulating as the body is being formulated in the wife, in the woman, it has a direct effect, the entire physicality and the entire spirituality. And that's why kashrus is such an important thing for the development and the emunah, the faith position. There was once, during the time of the Rambam's son, Rebbe Avram, that there was a city who sent him a letter that we're having terrible tragedy, lo aleinu, lo aleichem. Children are dying, young mothers, young fathers. What's going on? And he answered and said that there's somebody feeding you treif, that one of the butchers is bringing in treif meat, and they're eating it, and it's metamtim delev, and it's pulling everyone down. And they searched it out, and so they found. And the magefa stopped. So we have to be very careful in the level of kashrus that we have. One tzaddik once said that most Yidden end up eating half of the food in their lifetime that it's not kosher. Now that's a startling statement, but we could take just simple lettuce, and if you have a bug inside of it and it wasn't checked or thoroughly washed or whatever, there's 5 lavin at that time. 5 lavin. So the point being that we have to be extra careful. Now, when somebody goes into a restaurant and there's a mashgiach, that one witness who's erlich and from and fine says, I'm there and I've been watching the foods and the ingredients and it's kosher, we are allowed to rely on that person. In other words, I don't have to say, oh, who knows if the guy knows what he's doing or knows what's yes and what's no. Let me bring my own mashgiach. You're not mechuyev to do it, because the halacha is one witness in regard to isurim, and that is the reason if you come into a frum home and the wife did the cooking and she's serving you dinner, breakfast, whatever it is, you don't have to check out the kashrus. If she's a frum woman, she has the chazaka, the chizkas kashrus, and you're allowed to trust and rely on her statement that everything is okay. So we have to be mezaris and not just think, oh, well, probably it's okay. I saw a friend eating it, so it must be okay. Don't take a risk unless really you're on safe grounds to eat what we eat. And today, you know, when I was growing up, in the grocery store, there were 2 bars of candy that were Chol of Yisrael and kosher 100%. There was no choice. Walk into a candy store here in Borough Park and take a look at what's on the shelves. Hundreds, not 2 items, hundreds of items to choose from. So we have a variety in the meats and in the chocolates, and so much so that there's no reason for us to put ourselves into a question. Now, in this parsha of what's kosher and what's not, there is a pasuk that says, V'hara'a Aya and Daya. Now, if you look at the pasuk, it seems like it's three separate types of birds. But Rashi tells us on the spot that it's not different birds. It's one bird with three different names. And Chazal explain it's called Ra'ah because it could see very, very far. This bird has the power of seeing beyond what any human being sees. Further, means if we could see 10 miles away something, or 20 miles, this bird could see 50 miles. And Rashi says that it's Oimed beBavel, that this bird stands in Bavel, Veroya Nevela b'Yisrael, and it sees the dead carcasses in Eretz Yisrael. Now, it's a statement that makes you stand back, because if it wants to describe that it has the tremendous power of sight, so why doesn't it say that it's standing in Bavel, outside of Eretz, and it sees the Harabayas, something good? Why did it say Nevela as the example of what this Ra'ah, this bird, could see? So the Meforshim explain, because people are always judging, and they're from far. They don't know every detail of what happened in that family. They don't know what caused it and the whole story, but they heard bits and pieces, and they judge negatively. They're standing from far, but they're looking with a negative eye. You found it much more prevalent years ago that you had many from people. They were always criticizing Eretz Yisrael. And I remember I was once in a taxi in Eretz Yisrael, and we were talking about the matzav of what was going on. And I made a statement that I think the government should have considered this or that. So the taxi driver rightfully said to me, Rabbi, I want to say this to you. Where were you born? And I said, America, United States. So he said, you grew up in America? I said, yes. So he said, while you were growing up with your sneakers on and eating ice cream every day or every second day, I was waking up as a 5-year-old boy, because I was born here in Eretz Yisrael, wondering if my cousins in the army were killed that night or not. I was wondering if my next door neighbor was alive. Did a bomb or a missile or something fall into their house? That's how I grew up, not on ice cream and not with sneakers on. And I said, you are 100% correct. You can't be an outsider and judging what they should have done, what they could have done, what any of that. And that's why it had the name Ra'ah. And that's why Rashi gives the example of Oimed beBavel v'Roya Nevela b'Yisrael. But the second name is Ayah. Now, ayin means where is he? Like we say in Musaf in Keser, aye mekom kevodo. And the Mekubolim say that the sixth and final chelik of the Neshama Yisera come to Yidden when they say that word aye in Kedusha. And that's why you'll hear many times a chazan will take the word aye and go ah, yeah, and there he'll be myrich, a drop on the word aye. And it means where is he? Where? And the reason that this bird had also the name, not just Ra'ah, but had the name Aye, which means where is he, is because every time there was a good thing to do in his lifetime in Olam Hazeh, Ayah, where was he? He suddenly disappeared. When they were looking for volunteers who were going to go visit the sick or drive home the people or bring food to the elderly, Aye, nowhere to be found. That disappearing in every opportunity of goodness, and that we have to take sometimes the long road, not the easy way out. Who wants to be bothered every day a half an hour doing this and doing that? But we have to leap forward at opportunities that come our way to do chesed and to be able to do mitzvahs, and not look for the easy way out of where is he, because we can't find him. And the third name is Daya. The word Daya means enough. And you'll all hear it all the time, that somebody will hear that we have to do this, we need money to restore the mikveh, we need money to freshen the food that we're serving the people who are coming into our hall to eat. And when the solicitation begins for money or for participation, and the person says, what money? There's so much money sitting there. There's so much, there's always an excuse of why not to participate. And that's why this bird had these three names, Ra'ah, Ayah, and Daya, for the bad midos, and it was a treif bird, for the bad midos that it possessed and that it had in its being. And we know that treif food produces the bad midas. When somebody's mean-spirited or there are problems with their personality, in how much chesed and rachamim they exude amongst their community and family, that unfortunately it comes quite often from something treif, and they may not even be aware of it, of what's going on. But bad midos are cultivated by the foods that we eat and that we process in our physical body and in our spiritual neshama. And the outcome is that, like, it doesn't say Shabbos that someone's metamtem the lev, but by food, it does say it. And that's why we need the extra giant step in the area of watching and being careful. Now, there is a parsha in Re'eh about tzedakah. And I stress often with you, because as the Sfarim say, that the only mitzvah that it says tatzil mimoves, it saves from death, and mevi geula is tzedakah. It doesn't say if someone's a shomer Shabbos with all the hidurim, his whole life, that it's tatzil mimavis, it saves from death, and it saves, and it brings the geula, the redemption. And there were tzaddikim who sometimes said that with their ruach hakodesh, that somebody was in a terrible accident and everyone in the car either died or was critical, and this person walked away. And the tzaddik said, yeah, 2 years before, there was someone in dire need of money, and he wasn't getting a response from people, and this person said, come, I'm going to help you get out of your needy situation. We're going to save your house. We're going to pay your grocery bill. And it was that schus that he walked away from death. So we don't see it, so we're not so aware of the effectiveness of these things. But that's tzedakah, and that's why it's Chamishi in this week's parsha. And tzaddikim said, the Sforim bring, that someone who gets that aliyah is a gewaltige segula for ashiras, for richness. And there's some people in some shuls that they don't sell the aliyahs, but that aliyah they sell and they bring in thousands of dollars because everyone wants that aliyah. But coming back to the inyan of tzedakah, we know the Zohar HaKadosh says that the Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Yud and the Hey are connected, Yira and Ahava. And the Vav stands for Torah, all the Torah learning. And the last Hey are the mitzvahs. Now, you are aware that sometimes in the Torah there are 3 or 4 places that a word is written, but we pronounce it not as it is written. And that's called Kri and Ksiv. It's written one way, and it is pronounced a different way. That's called Kri and Ksiv. Now, even though Torah is the Vav, and the last Hey of the Shem Havaya is all the mitzvahs, but there's one, the Svarim say, that's Kri and Ksiv. It's not the Vav and it's not the last Hey, and that's tzedakah. It's higher than all the other mitzvahs, and that's why it's tatzil mimaves. In its ingredients, it is able to provide golden opportunities that does not meet the eye. And I always, by the faculty meetings at the beginning of a school year for years, always said at that faculty meeting that the teachers will find on their desk or in the drawer of their desk a pile of nickels or dimes, and that they are to see that every single child in the classroom before they begin davening gives tzedakah. There's a pushka there, and there's tzedakah. Because the Bnei Yissaschar says on the pasuk in Tilim, Ani b'tzedek echeze panecha, which simply means I will see with righteousness your face. I mean Hashem, that I will communicate with you, I will daven, and I will be speaking to you and be with you. So the Bnei Yissaschar teach, Ani b'tzedek, with tzedakah, echazeh panecha, I will be able to unite and see you and express my tefillah and my bakoshos to you. Now, the Gemara tells us in Brachos that when a person gives $1, a quarter, whatever, to tzedakah, he is benched, he's blessed from heaven with 6 brachos. V'hamafayaso, and when he gives the coin or the dollar bill, smiles or says a good word, have a wonderful day, he gets an extra 5 brachos. So he gets 11 brachos from that simple quarter or dollar, whatever he gives. Now, the Gemara then tells a story of Binyamin HaTzadik, who was a Gabbai tzedakah. And the Gemara says that a woman came in to him and said, please help sustain me. I have 7 children at home. And Binyamin HaTzadik said to her, believe me, I promise you that I don't have a coin here left in the pushka, in the money for tzedakah. It's all given out. So she answered him, the Gemara says, I want you to know, if you don't give me something to go buy food, I and my 7 children are about to die. So the Gemara says that he had in his pocket money that he needed to buy food for his family. And he took it out and gave it to the woman. And then the Gemara says that like a year later, Binyamin HaTzadik, who was young, got sick and was about to die. So the Gemara says that the Malachi Asharis in heaven, in unison, got up and said, what? How could you take the life of Binyamin HaTzadik? You write in your own Torah that somebody who saves the life of one is as if he sustained the entire world. He saved the whole world. And here, he saved 8, the woman and her 7 children. And Shamayim said, you are right, and tore up the Gezerah, and he lived another 22 years. So the Meforshim ask, why 22 years? Why not 28? Why not 15? Why 22? So the Gemara in Soita, Daf Chof Amid Beis, says that if somebody does a big schus, he adds 3 months' time of life to his life. Now let's figure out the cheshbon. Binyamin gave the woman, so he got 6 brachas, but another 5 brachas, so it's 11 brachas. So there were 8 people involved. There was the woman with her 7 children. So 8 times 11 is 88. That means he had 88 brachas. But the Gemara in Soita says that each schus, you add on 3 months of life to you. So 88 times 3 is 264. So Binyamin HaTzadik, by giving this woman this tzedakah, added on to his life 264 months, because 6 brachos, v'hamafayaso, 5 more, that's 11, and 11 times the 8 people is 88, times the 3 months for each one of those chusim is 264 months, and 264 months is exactly 22 years. So we have a lot of opportunities out there to enrich and to uplift the quality of our lives. Now, at the end of our parsha, it says, Shalosh Pa'amim Bashana Yeroeh Kol Zachorcha Es Panei Ha'adon, or as Panei. In one place it says Ha'adon, once it says Panei Elokecha. So the Gemara in Psachim says that Shimon HaTeimani darshaned all the S, and wherever you have the word S, we don't really have a translation for the word S in and of itself, and you have all over the Torah the word S. So he darshaned every S until he came up until Es Hashem Elokecha Tira L'Rabos Talmidei Chachomim. He didn't darshan that. Rabbi Akiva came when he stopped darshaning every single S, and he stopped by that one. Rabbi Akiva stepped up and he said, and I have the answer to what that tells us and teaches us. And he said it includes Talmidei Chachomim, that we have to, because the Medrash says, Kabed es avicha, and all the kibud for your Rebbeim means mehoncha, from your money, which means that you have to give support to your Rebbe. Now, Shimon HaTeimani was a very poor man, and if he would have darshaned it, he was afraid that people would have said, oh, you darshaned it, mehoncha, because you want your Talmidim to give you money, so you should have a benefit, that you're very, very poor. But Rabbi Akiva was supported at the end of his life by Kalba Savu, his father-in-law, who was fabulously wealthy. So Rabbi Akiva wasn't afraid to darshan it. He got up and he darshaned it because no one could think he's darshaning that drasha so that he should get the money because he needs the money. He didn't need the money at all. There was a time that he needed desperately that his wife, who grew up in a millionaire's house, used to go out to the fields to take from the garbage things for her and the family to eat because they didn't have a dime, because Kalba Savu was very angry that Rabbi Akiva, that his daughter married Rabbi Akiva, because till 40 years old, Rabbi Akiva didn't learn. And that's the reason at the top of that mountain in Tveria, when you go to Rabbi Akiva, there's one person buried next to him, which is the Ramchal, who lived 39 years, because Mekubalim said that he came back to fill in for the 39 years that Rabbi Akiva did not learn, and he was the neshama, and he fulfilled that tafkid, and that's how he was able to be buried next to him. There's nobody else there. There's Rabbi Akiva, and there's the Ramchal. There's Moshe Chaim Latzato, buried right next, who lived exactly to the day, the time till Rabbi Akiva began learning. We should be able to realize all the brachas, hineni nosen lefnechem, the bracha, and to thank our gifts that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us each and every day of our life, and that we should be able to have the benefit of basking in the glory of that nachas ruach HaKadosh Baruch Hu that we do, and to bring about the geula even an inch or a foot closer.